Hi, my name is Jon Svitak, attorney with the Shannon Law Group, and our firm helps people across the United States recover financially and emotionally after they experience an injury or side effect due to a vaccine. And we do this by pursuing compensation on their behalf in the Vaccine Injury Compensation Program. So millions of people every year get their annual flu shot, right around September, October of every flu season. And for most of these people, they won't experience a single side effect from the vaccine. Some individuals may experience minimal side effects like a sore arm or swelling at the injection site, maybe a fever, some nausea. And this may last for a couple of days and then resolve. And that's, I think, the story for most people when they get a flu shot. However, a very small number of people unfortunately experience more severe side effects. And the two most common and that we're aware of and that we get calls on are SIRVA and Guillain-Barre Syndrome. So SIRVA stands for shoulder injury related to vaccine administration. And what happens is when you receive the flu shot, it's either administered too high up in your shoulder or at the wrong angle, and it causes inflammation in your shoulder joint. So this is the symptoms of that particular injury would be pain, obviously, within the first 48 hours that you received your shot. Also restricted range of motion, decreased strength, and maybe some swelling in the shoulder. For Guillain-Barre syndrome, the initial symptoms would be a numbness or tingling sensation in your extremities, starting with the fingers, toes, and it's a progressive condition. So this will go from your fingers or toes into your hands, your feet, your legs, and eventually you're going to have some trouble walking, some trouble standing from a seated position. And if you're experiencing either of these conditions, whether it's SIRVA or Guillain-Barre syndrome, it's important to see a doctor as soon as possible so that they can properly diagnose it and treat it. For Guillain-Barre syndrome, what happens is when you get the flu shot, your immune system mistakenly attacks your central nervous system. And usually the effects or the symptoms of that condition will be felt right around 2 weeks after you get the vaccine. It could be anywhere from 3 days to 42 days after the vaccine. And the initial sensation that you're going to feel is a numbness or tingling sensation in your fingers, your toes, and it's a progressive condition. So it's going to travel from your fingers, toes into your feet, your hands, your legs, your arms. And if you don't get treatment as soon as possible, it can become a life-threatening condition. So for whether you have the initial symptoms of what you think is a SIRVA injury or Guillain-Barre syndrome, it's important to see your doctor as soon as possible so you can get the right treatment for you and be on your way to recovery. If you're watching this video and you've either already gone to the doctor and gotten a diagnosis, you have SIRVA, you have Guillain-Barre syndrome, you might be wondering, do I have any legal options? And yes, you do. You can file a case in the Vaccine Injury Compensation Program. That's what we do. We file petitions for people who experience these injuries due to the flu shot. If you believe you've been injured by a vaccine, you do have some legal options. What we do is we file petitions for people in the Vaccine Injury Compensation Program. So I do all of our consultations. If you call us and you tell me about a potential injury due to a vaccine, I'll ask you some background questions to try and figure out, is this a case that we can take on? But before we even get to the question of, can we establish was your injury the result of the vaccine, we first have to determine whether you're eligible for the program. And there's some requirements before we can even file a petition for you. And the first of those would be, did you receive a vaccine that's covered under the program? So there's a list of covered vaccines, and if you received one that's not covered by the program, unfortunately we can't file a petition for you. The other requirement is that the symptoms of your injury have to persist for at least 6 months before we can file. This is called the severity requirement. If your symptoms did not persist for 6 months, the only other way we can file a petition for you is if you were hospitalized as a result of the vaccine injury and underwent a surgical procedure. Those are the two ways that you can satisfy the severity requirement. The third eligibility requirement is that you received your vaccine within the United States. There's a few exceptions to that rule, but in general, you have to have received your vaccine in the States. Now, if you meet all those requirements, we can go ahead and continue with our consultation to see if it's a case that we can pursue for you. And if it is, what we would then do is start working on your petition. So we would draft your petition with the specific allegations of which condition or injury or diagnosis was caused by whatever vaccine that you received. Now, aside from just drafting the petition, we have to support it with evidence. So we would have to gather all of your medical records, draft some affidavits for you and maybe some family members or friends who are aware of your injury or observed the symptoms of your injury. And then we'd file all of that along with the petition. Once everything that we consider to be supportive of your case has been filed, the government will then begin its review. So somebody from the Department of Health and Human Services will be assigned to review your case, review the evidence, and then come to a determination. Do they concede that yes, this was an injury caused by a vaccine, or are they going to dispute it for some reason? Now, if they dispute the case for a particular reason, doesn't mean that you've lost. It just means that we go in front of a judge and we have to prove it. We have to advocate on your behalf and try and convince the judge that your injury was caused by the vaccine. Now, if we're either successful in doing that or the government concedes that this was a vaccine injury, the next phase of the program is the damages phase, where we determine what compensation you're entitled to. So in general, there are 3 types of compensation. There's out-of-pocket medical expenses, so anything not covered by insurance, co-pays, payments towards a deductible, maybe some medical equipment that wasn't covered or over-the-counter medication, things like that, you can get reimbursed for. If you're out of work because of this injury, any lost earnings, income, wages can be reimbursed through this program. And then finally, there's pain and suffering damages as well. So the pain that you were in during this injury, the impact that it had on your daily life, your activities, your hobbies, all of that goes into determining what your pain and suffering was. And for each of these categories of damages, there's also the potential for future compensation. So if we come to the point where we're going to resolve your case, or the judge is going to enter an award of compensation, if you're still dealing with the effects of the injury, the court can consider future compensation as well. So how would you navigate this program? The best way is to hire an attorney. And the reason why it's the best way is because it's free. You don't pay anything to hire an attorney, and you're not going to pay them anything at the end of your case either. There's no contingency fee, there's no retainer, there's no bills. It's completely free to hire an attorney. And it's a good idea too, because these cases can become complicated. In my experience, the government isn't quick to concede on these vaccine injury cases. If they can find a reason to dispute your case, they'll find it. So it's good to have an attorney with you who can negotiate with the government on the value of your case, who can get in front of the judge and convince them this is a vaccine injury. So it's really a no-brainer to hire an attorney to help you with this. If you'd like to learn more about the Vaccine Injury Compensation Program or your rights, I wrote a book about it. It's called Vaccine Injuries: Understanding the Vaccine Injury Compensation Program. You can get yourself a free copy of this book by texting VICP to 312-847-2428, and we'll ship you a free copy.